Today we've got a great video for you. I'm going to go over what has made my journey much better. As a reminder, no electricity, just a small shed, no big power tools. Let's get straight into it. Tool number one. I think this will be in everybody's recommendation pile when they start out woodworking and as they carry on. I want to go through what I use it for, as this was one of the first things I bought, why it has been with me along this journey, and why I never do a project where I don't pick this up. So this is what I had from the start. I'm not saying this style doesn't have a use. This will only do so much within your project. But what you can't do with this is you can't use it to guide your circular saw or your jigsaw. And that, in my opinion, is where this comes into its own. As you know, I don't have power down here. I don't have a table saw. I need to be able to do crosscuts square. And that is where this comes into its own. I'm not going to get all loud right now, but imagine, as if you will, that you want to cut this piece of oak in a 90 degree and you don't have a table saw, a miter saw, or any other big machinery that you can do it with. What you're going to do is you're going to place the speed square on the wood. Imagine it's on the bench. There is a raised section here to clamp onto the wood, and now you can only slide it across. You cannot angle it. So anything you run across it is going to be cutting at a 90. So that's what you do. You take your circular saw and you run it past it, holding it against the square. Personally, I like to point it towards me, because then when you take your circular saw, you are supporting it before it even gets to the piece of wood. So there's less chance of it skewing off. And as long as you've got a good grip on this, you can cut through and you're going to get a 90-degree cut. Same goes for your jigsaw. If that's all you've got, that'll work just as easily. See, that for me is why the speed square is the most important tool I bought when I started out. I actually sometimes clamp the wood and the square onto a bench and then cut it. These don't replace a table saw, but when you've got things like the speed square, it brings you really close to being able to do everything that you can do on a table saw. Not quite, but nearly. The worst part of building any project is sanding. Anybody who's hand sanded for a decent amount of time will realise that it is really hard work. And so from that side of things, from the ergonomic side of things, that is where tip number 2 comes into it. If you imagine you are just using a piece of sandpaper and you are rubbing it on a piece of wood, there's going to be pressure points. Each one of your fingers is going to be squeezing down hard. So first of all, yes, you are going to affect the quality of the work you're doing. But what I'm going into is the human side of it, the actual mechanical wear and tear on yourself. This is number 2. I've tried a few different methods on this. I bought this one, too small. I can't get a good grip on it. And I haven't got massive hands, but so I made my own blocks of wood. Now this is okay, but equally it gets scuffed, its corners come off it. It's good if you're just doing the edges of a corner of a box or something and you don't want to round it off. So there are uses, but if you want a one size fits all solution to a lot of your sanding needs, this is brilliant. Attach a sandpaper disc to it. You'll see mine's too small. I've run out of the larger ones. It hasn't affected the performance of it, but the most important thing that I'm talking to you about is the ergonomic and the protecting your arm from wear and tear, if you like, over time. We will do a lot of sanding in our careers, love it or hate it. It's part of the job. You cannot get the finish that we want on everything without having to sand something. And this just makes your life a little bit better. As I say, this is more of a section than a one tool. That sanding pad is priceless. It is brilliant. But there's a plus one that I want to talk to you guys about, and it is up to you whether you want to take it on or not. Anybody who's watched any of my videos, there's always a time that I pull this out. Some people will attach this to the angle grinder and they will use it to sand an entire tabletop work project. I have no idea how you can make that work. So I'm not saying this will replace all of the big sanding machines and the orbital sanders and all of this. I use it very, very differently. I take my drill, pop this in like that, and then I clamp the drill onto my workbench. Just a quick grip clamp there on the main body of it, keeps it sturdy. And then I take a smaller clamp to clamp the trigger. Now, caveat, this is not a recommendation in the sense of I think everybody should be doing it. what I'm saying here is if you are comfortable doing this, then I find it works very well for projects, but please, it's at your own risk. It will make it spin constantly, so deal with it with due care and attention, but in a pinch, this has been absolutely brilliant. So obviously the first drawback to this is, one, you're using a drill for a job that it's not supposed to do. And if you feel comfortable doing it, happy days. Number two, the discs are never perfectly flat. This is why you can't really use it to sand large surfaces. Not easily anyway, it takes a fair bit of practice. I have done a whole chessboard with it. It took a long time. But if you put a 40 grit sandpaper on it, you can take off a lot of material very quickly with it on the highest setting. So if you are confident to do that, as I am, then this is an incredible +1 to sanding for anybody who hasn't got all of the big machines. This is the last recommendation for sanding. I got it from a charity shop. I think it used to be sold for kitchens, but it is rubber. So when you put a piece on it, say I'm sanding this disc, maybe I want to make another sign, pop it down and you could start sanding. Look at that. You can't move the workpiece, so it's not going to slip around underneath you. You don't have to clamp it, so you haven't got to keep moving it around. This is absolutely brilliant. Once you finish with it, you shake it out outside. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So if you happen to see any in the kitchen section next time you're going through, grab yourself a square, metre by a metre will do you, and then all your sanding needs might just get a little bit easier. That's enough of sanding. I cannot talk about sanding any longer. That is as much as I'm willing to talk about. But sanding leaves us with other issues that we need to contend with. Number one, the dust. And number two is connected. I'm going to do that as the last part of this video. And I'm going to leave you with something that you may not expect to be the second most useful thing that I have discovered in the 2 years of woodworking. We're going to go on to number three. Sanding isn't always the answer, and when I first started out woodworking, I honestly thought that the way you finished every project was you constructed it, you sanded it, and then you put finish on it. And that's not necessarily the best way in everything you're doing. For instance, in the last build last week, Card in the Corner, where we made these amazing little tooth fairy boxes, I used this instead of sanding. And this is a card scraper. I genuinely thought when I first started out woodworking that this is something I'd have to build my skill level up to. The skill, in my opinion, is not in the card scraping, it's actually in the sharpening. And that's an entirely different video. But when you get these out of the box, I found that they are ready to use. So until they go dull, practice, 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 and you'll get brilliant results with them. I didn't want to use sandpaper because it would round it. So instead, you push your card scraper on it and you take very small shavings and you get the most beautiful finish. Very often, on the right type of wood, it is far better than sanding. So really consider this a very big recommendation. And please, don't do what I did. Don't think, oh no, beginner, I'm not good enough. I've got to build up to certain tools. Something like this will make you feel like you've suddenly progressed a certain amount further than you might even have thought you had. And I love it. It's got other uses. I've seen it for removing varnish, for removing paint. I have another use that I'm going to do in another video, which is going to really make people cross. But I would definitely recommend, get yourself a set of card scrapers. The one I've got comes with a small one, a big one, and on top of that, a curved one and a rounded one that will fit into all the different applications you need. You can also make yourself a handy little scraper rack on there, which I'm going to post at some stage in the near future. That rack will keep them all away and you aren't going to worry about losing them, which I do a lot. If you haven't got the dust removal systems, you will have to get yourself a really good mask. I started off using the normal paper masks, and you can tell after just a couple of days of doing it that you're not doing yourself any favours. If you want to prolong your woodworking journey, which I'm sure we all do, you need to look after the safety side of things. Whether it's earplugs, whether it's a dust mask, it's so important. You'll see the big workshops where they've got all of the dust extraction going. They won't wear these as much as I would in this shed, but that's because they're clearing the air more regularly. This is the one I use. I'll show it to you. I've tried the Velcro ones that fit over your mouth. Anybody who wears glasses, the first thing, apart from the safety, the first thing you'll need to think about is, do your glasses mist up with the masks on? I can say for me, this one is brilliant. It doesn't mist my glasses up. Gets a bit hot in the summer, but it fits comfortably with the 2-strap system, and I've found I haven't had to replace the filters. I just gave them a hoover out once every 6 months. This is my second one in 3 years. I can't speak highly enough of it. You may end up wearing this for 6, 7, 8 hours. I've done it before and it's absolutely fine. I would say don't leave it in your shed because the dust might settle into it if you put it the wrong way up. Take it up to the house with you, but it is absolutely priceless. Anything you think is going to kick dust up, this thing will protect your lungs from it, and that's vital. Okay folks, we're at number 5? I think we're at number 5. Hopefully we are, because then I can say we're here at number 5 and I'll actually have got it right. This is the one that I think will surprise most of the people out there in what has made the biggest difference to me in my woodworking. And again, just like similar to all the others, it's not really about quality of the work you're doing. It's the quality of the finish, admittedly, but it's more for making a job easier. I made all these boxes, and the last job you do on anything really is to sand it down or to use your card scraper on it, and then you want to put your finish on it, whether it's lacquer, in this case spray lacquer, or whether it's a varnish, or whether you're going to oil it. You need to be able to take and remove anything that's settled on it while you've been working on it, so you can get the best finish possible. I always used to use a damp cloth, then I'd wait till I knew it was absolutely dry, and then I'd apply the finish. Normally speaking, a lot would clump in the corners and I'd get really frustrated. It would ruin the quality of the finish, and if you've spent all day making this, the last thing you need to do is put the finish on it. You don't want to ruin all your hard work, the hardest bit, by making a mess of one of the easiest bits. You've got compressed air, you give it a squeeze and it gets rid of all the dust. Those take up more space, they need electricity. I don't have them in the shed. For me, this revolutionised what I was making. This is a tack cloth. It is horribly sticky, but it doesn't leave a sticky residue on what you're wiping. What they suggest on there is exactly right. You fold it into the first dimensions you want to use. Let's say we're doing our jewellery box, you wipe it all off, it comes away brown and it's got all of the dust on it and it takes everything off. Well, for the next one, fold it around, use the other side. Open it up again, fold it around, use a clean side. You'll get about 5, 6, 7 decent sized boxes out of one tack cloth. It will take all the dust off it and you can literally spray your finish on it straight away, safe in the knowledge that this is holding all of the dust. I'll wipe down my bench quickly as well, so that any dust that kicks up won't come down around the product, whatever it is that I'm spraying. This is phenomenal. I just pop it back in the bag, fold the top over, get one of my clamps and just leave it for next time. This is definitely hand in hand with the Speed Square for what I didn't know at the start that I wish I did on the very first day that I started woodworking. So there we have it. If you do nothing more on your journey than check out tack cloths and Speed Squares, then this video has been absolutely worthwhile. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, then you've got this one and this one, which are really similar and I think you're gonna love. Please click the like button, give me a comment, and of course, as always, please subscribe. Join us on our journey. I'll see you on the next one.